Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Ovum webinar entitled Digital Transformation, Where Modernization and SOA APIs Fit. My name is John Madden. I'm the practice leader for the Global Services team here at Ovum. We're a worldwide IT market research and consulting firm, for those of you who may not be familiar with us. We're excited to talk to you today about issues related to digital transformation, application modernization, and in particular how a SOA API approach to modernization. It's an important trend that we're seeing taking hold in the market, and we're going to talk about that more in detail. I'll get to the speaker introductions in a moment. First, the agenda for today's webinar. I'm going to start by providing some views of the overall market, what we're seeing in terms of business transformation, and how, what's really driving application modernization efforts among corporations and enterprises today. I'll talk about what's pushing, corporate and enterprise customers to modernize and modernize now, and what are some of the various methods of application modernization that are in play. Then we're going to focus specifically on a SOA API approach to modernization and its benefits. My co-presenter for today from Torry Harris Business Solutions, Karthik, he'll be speaking about one such example, of a SOA API approach with one of their customers, Schneider Electric. So together we're going to speak for about 40 minutes in total, and then as Duncan mentioned, we're going to open it up for a Q&A, and we look forward to your questions. Just real quick, a little bit about those of us who are on the call. I'm the practice leader, as I said, for the Global Services team at Ovum. I've been covering the services market for the better part of 16 years. In our practice, we cover the full spectrum of the IT services stack, from connectivity through infrastructure and cloud, through application services and modernization and business process. And we're writing a lot these days about digital transformation and application modernization. So the work that Torry Harris and other providers are doing in this space is just what we're interested in, and we're writing quite a bit about it. Karthik, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Hi, I'm Karthik T.S. I'm heading the Center of Excellence at Torry Harris. So I've been with Torry Harris for the last 16 years. I've led many transformation programs, hands-on. Currently, I head the Center of Excellence, the team that's responsible for products and frameworks development. We collect best practices across the business units, and we provide strategy for the digital transformation. So legacy API modernization is one of our key areas of focus, and I'm going to talk in detail about the specific approaches and then get into the case study. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Karthik. So let's dive right in. Like I said, I'm going to start just talking about some of the overall trends that we're seeing. And let's start by talking about transformation, transforming business lying at the core of digital initiatives. Really, it's about digital transformation. Whether you call it something differently, or whether it's transformation capital T, something really large, or transformation smaller t, something really focused, it's real and it's happening. And customers of all types and sizes are engaged in various transformation projects. They're discussing it with us. They're discussing it with providers like Torry Harris. They realize that small or large, they're doing it because they realize that they need to keep up with the accelerated pace of change in the market. Speed to market these days is critical, whatever your vertical industry, in order to compete effectively. And that means transforming the IT and the processes that you have now in order to do things more quickly and more flexibly and with a greater degree of agility. It's not just about moving faster to be competitive. It's also transforming in order to get closer to your customer. Enhancing customer experience and customer intimacy are things we hear from customers all the time in terms of strategic priorities for them, to get to know their customers better, what they're buying, how they're buying it, in order to deliver services and products more effectively, and ultimately increase customer satisfaction and ultimately increase revenue. As I said, there are a lot, we're in a period of accelerated change in the market, and things are moving so fast. There's a lot of potential disruptors out there. So companies need to be able to adapt quickly and be more agile in terms of how they operate and how they serve customers. And they come to the conclusion that the only way to do that is to transform the way they do it. And how they do that is through leveraging different technologies like cloud services or analytics or automation or artificial intelligence or mobility. They realize that they can use these technologies to really change the core of their business, compete more effectively, and open up additional revenue opportunities. So moving on to the next slide, so customers, they're talking about transforming. It's real. They want to try to engage. The reality is that technology and IT services lie at the heart of these transformation efforts. And when customers consider transforming their current IT, customers are tackling it in three major ways and really viewing it in terms of how they can deliver business outcomes or how it impacts the business challenges they're facing. And in some cases, I just want to point out, these are not mutually exclusive, okay? Many times they're happening really at the same time. They want to enhance their business. They want to leverage IT in order to enhance customer engagements and their customer experience through either digital communities. They want to reach out and engage with customers across new and multiple touch points. They want to extend their business. They want to use IT to create new digital streams and opportunities to raise their brand awareness or really enhance their customer experience overall. And they want to redefine their business, using IT to fundamentally change their business process or multiple processes to deliver new value propositions, leverage information and data in new ways through analytics, get to know their customers better, or ultimately optimize their supply chain, how they're making products or delivering products and services. So these three, enhance, extend, redefine, these are the types of business outcomes that are really at the heart of digital transformation efforts. And in our experience, business outcomes need to be part of those transformation discussions in order for that transformation to succeed. It's not just a technology proposition. Technology is wonderful, and obviously it enables a lot of this transformation to happen. But it's really about aiming for business outcomes. And when you achieve those business outcomes, that means making changes in your IT, making changes in your processes, making changes in your culture, and then managing all that change really effectively. So moving on to the next slide. So transformation is real. Customers are engaging in transformation and leveraging IT for different types of business outcomes. And we found in our experience to do those things, application modernization is essential to enabling that transformation, really looking at your application landscape and your business processes and your workloads. Customers are having to look at those things and have a discussion about what's working, what needs to be improved, and what's obsolete. It's an important discussion to have, not always an easy discussion to have, but it's an important discussion to have, excuse me, because the reality is, maintaining some of the current environments, it's inefficient and it's really costly. There's a lot of legacy systems out there, and a lot of them are not going away anytime soon, or certainly not in the near term. And some of them may continue to be around for the long term. So how do you manage those legacy systems, but also engage with new modern IT systems in order to improve your business? As I said, there's a lot of legacy systems out there. The reality is there's a shortage of skills in some of those old programming languages, and support from the vendor is really starting to taper off in some cases. Excuse me. Put those things together, and that means that maintaining those legacy systems can be really costly. Again, from a human resources and a support perspective, those costs can get exceedingly high over time. So modernization provides not a way out, but it provides an opportunity to manage your entire application landscape more effectively, but also improve the existing business processes and operational practices that you have right now. And it's an important consideration because, as I said, with the accelerated pace of change, the nature of the competitive environment, there are some companies out there who really feel the threat and the risk of becoming obsolete in their industry if they don't modernize quickly and efficiently. It's a real concern when they see the different disruptive companies that are out there upending different business models, upending different vertical industries. They've seen a lot of companies go by the wayside, and they don't want to be next. So that's why modernization and ultimately transformation have become such strategic imperatives among different customer sets. We see this in our survey work, in our conversations with customers, in the different data points that we have. There is a real need to do it now and do it quickly to be more effective. So the reality is that moving to a modern platform through a modernization effort or a transformation effort, it ultimately is going to provide a way for companies to introduce new applications, new business processes, and ultimately, hopefully, tap into new revenue opportunities. So moving on to the next slide. So just to review, transformation's real, business benefits are critical to consider. Apps modernization is an important first step in that transformation. So why modernize now? Why do we see so many customers interested in application modernization? And we've seen this trend just tick up in activity the past couple of years. We think 2017 is going to be no different. The reality is there are some technical, some market, and some cultural considerations at play here in terms of what's pushing customers to modernize. From a technology perspective, there's just the modern cloud-delivered, mobile-enabled platforms. That's becoming the de facto way of doing business. And the reality is technology is in such a state, the evolution of technology in such a state that it's actually businesses are able to do many of the things that were impossible to do, say, just a few years ago, because some of the incredible technology advances that have happened over just the past couple of years. The tech's ready for prime time, to put it bluntly, and leveraging those technologies into these more modern platforms is a reality. So they're able to do it now because the technology is ready to help them do it now. It's just, what we're finding is that IT delivery and IT and application development, application management, it's a really tough strategic priority now for a lot of companies and corporations, particularly when it comes to DevOps and agile methodologies and continuous integration. These are things that companies weren't talking about just a couple of years ago in terms of that being a strategic IT priority, but now it is when it's looked through the lens of transformation and modernization. There's increasing, concerns about data privacy and security. In all of our surveys, in a lot of our conversations with customers, this is a number one priority, not just from a data security perspective, but certainly within their vertical industry, different compliance issues that companies and customers need to deal with. The reality is for a lot of customers, the current systems and configurations that they have, in some cases, it's just not getting the job done. So as they modernize, and as they modernize now, they need to think about these data privacy and security considerations and build that into that modernization plan. So that was those are some of the technical and market considerations in terms of why customers are modernizing now. From a cultural consideration, the reality is that the current workforce and the workforce that's coming out of colleges and the workforce that's really coming up right now, they're young, they're mobile, and they're global. And so they have absolutely specific considerations about how they want to work and how they want to consume services themselves as consumers. The reality is they need it better, faster, and cheaper. So when you look at that reality, a lot of companies' current systems, they're just not up to the task to serve those needs. So they need to modernize in order to serve their workforces, but also serve their consumers and hopefully grow their business. So to review, just one more time, transformation's real. Application modernization is making it happen. Many customers are modernizing now. Now, there are several approaches to modernization, and I want to talk through some of this just a little bit. If you've been in IT or around technology for any amount of time, you're probably familiar with some of these phrases or approaches. If you're looking to modernize your application environment, replace with off-the-shelf, rip out and put in something custom, or repurpose existing code. Replace, rip out, or repurpose. Those phrases have been floating around for quite some time. Involved in those approaches are several methods, including virtualization, code migration, and re-architecting. One approach in particular I want to focus on is the SOA-based approach. And now Karthik's going to speak through this approach in more detail and talk about Torry Harris's engagement with Schneider Electric, which really make a lot of this real. But just from a high level, modernization, as I've said, it involves dealing with legacy applications. And as I've discussed, they have a high cost of ownership. They're rigid and some are difficult to modify to meet the ongoing business demands. They require skill sets that are fewer and fewer to find. And the reality is these systems, they do not adequately meet today's security demands. So, because a lot of those applications, they were originally implemented to a specific business process. And they work well, as long as that business process remains unchanged. But the reality is, as I've said, today's market is all about change. And the business environment is so fast-paced that legacy processes need to evolve. Now, most modernization initiatives are aimed at bridging the gaps and demolishing silos that have traditionally existed between disparate legacy systems and applications. And a SOA API approach to modernization can help address that. More than that, a SOA API-based approach can build those bridges internally and indeed externally to a much wider degree to allow for even more capabilities and ultimately, I think, as Karthik's going to show, more flexibility with your applications and your business process and ultimately bring a benefit to your business. You know, we're starting to see corporate customers that are involved in modernization activities utilize a service-oriented architecture and APIs to link systems and track data across business processes to support their digital transformation initiatives and really provide an end-to-end view of their customers, of their business, and then they can react accordingly because of the way SOA and APIs work. So as I said, Karthik will take us through a case study to demonstrate the SOA API approach in more detail. But as I move on to the next slide, there are several reasons why corporate customers are engaging in this approach. The ability to derive better business intelligence and ultimately get closer to customers. Because APIs, you know, they help access data across internal systems and even some social media profiles and external systems. Eventually, a company can create a greater degree of customer intimacy that helps build their business. APIs, by their very nature, are built for leveraging partner networks for this kind of functionality. APIs allow businesses to open up, you know, some of their functionality and tie them into partner systems to provide even more customization. And ultimately, that could open up new avenues to customers and new revenue opportunities. APIs, they offer new ways for enterprises to create ecosystems and move beyond their traditional systems so that they can use third-party applications with APIs tapping into that. Ultimately, APIs can deliver new levels of flexibility and agility that can make competing in this accelerated market more effective. And ultimately, using this approach, what customers are hoping for, again, when you're dealing with an accelerated pace of change, is that there are quick and visible results, whether that's closer customer intimacy, raising brand awareness, or opening up new revenue opportunities. So that's a very high-level view of some of the things that are happening in the market with digital transformation, application modernization, and the SOA API approach to modernization. With those high-level views out of the way, let me turn it over to Karthik, who will make this a bit more real by talking about how Torry Harris Business Solutions worked with a large global customer on the SOA API approach. Karthik, over to you.
Thanks, John. So I'm going to talk about the case study. So before I get into the case study, the details, I would like to establish some of the fundamental principles that we consciously follow and apply. And then when I walk you through the case study, I'll show how we applied those principles. So first of all, I would like to introduce the concept of the customer journey-centric approach. So when you're talking about digital transformation in the context of legacy migration, so it's important to keep in mind that we are living in an age where there are new digital channels, the mobile, social, connected devices everywhere. So you should not just view this as a channel-centric approach. Channels are given, like it's a given that today customers have new ways of access. So which means the way in which a customer used to transact with the business 10 years ago is completely different from the way in which a customer transacts with the business today. So it really calls for the need to reinvent the customer journeys. The customer journeys have changed because the customer has changed and the access points have changed. So this is going to be the key focus point when talking about legacy transformation. So when I'm going to talk about the Schneider case study, so just to let you know that we have API-enabled legacy applications, specifically keeping customer journey in mind for large governments in the Middle East, for telcos in India, UK, Ireland, and some of the insurance companies. And one of the key points to note is these companies have legacy systems that have evolved over many years, right? And it's not practically possible for these companies to switch off their legacy and buy the new stack and immediately go live. It's a progressive transformation. It's not overnight transformation. It's not a big bang approach, right? And it's very important to keep this point in mind. So with this context, I'd request you to switch to the next slide, please. Yes. So I'd like to talk about a very favorite example, Uber and Airbnb, that I'm sure these case studies are talked about in every digital transformation presentation. So So the key point I would like to highlight here is, if you take the case of Uber, Airbnb, and all the digital natives, the IT backbone is not legacy. They usually, these companies create their IT from scratch. And when they create their IT from scratch, it's pretty much given that these applications are designed from the ground up for new customer journeys. And if you contrast this with the traditional enterprises like large banks, retail, energy management companies like Schneider Electric, for example, the IT backbone consists of legacy and packaged applications. And when I say packaged applications, I'm talking about the commercial applications like the ERP, CRM, and some of them may be in-house applications. Some of them have evolved over many years. And even if you're talking about packaged applications, the life cycle of these applications are very large. Like, it takes a lot of time for these applications to evolve, and it's not practical to simply keep upgrading forever. So as I said, the customer journeys are very old, and big bang replacement is very risky. It's not practically possible to switch off the old system and bring on the new system. So what it requires is to look at the customer journeys and map them to the legacy functionality and progressively recast them into the service-oriented architecture paradigm. So this requires what we call recasting of legacy assets. So I'll explain this term in detail. What do we mean by recasting? So I'll explain this with an example. If you can move to the next slide, please. So we have picked a use case from a telco. This applies to any domain. It's fairly domain neutral. It applies to energy management. It applies to Schneider Electric. It applies to any of our large transformation projects that we do. So if you take a look at the customer journey, it spans across multiple silos, and these silos are functional domains. It could be your billing. It could be your CRM. It could be the last mile, which could be in telco context a network element, or in the context of retail, it could be your back office order management system. So a customer journey spans across these systems. And from our experience, we have seen that most of these functional domains work in silos. So when you have an issue in a particular life cycle stage, a particular leg of the journey, usually the customer experience is impacted. The reason being, these applications are legacy applications, and usually when it comes to integrating these legacy applications, the customer journey is not kept in mind. So usually there will be a phenomenon of passing the buck. There will be no visibility upstream and downstream. So when it comes to the silo in terms of the people, process, applications, data, and all the related lifecycle activities like support and evolution, it's all done keeping in mind only that functional domain. So very few organizations have a view on the end-to-end customer journeys. They do have end-to-end business processes, and we consider business process as an inside-out approach, and the customer journey-based thinking is an outside-in approach. So in the digital transformation, it's very important to think in terms of an outside-in approach, and then map to your applications, processes, and legacy. So keeping customer journey as a focus point, you need to look at the legacy applications that have touch point in the customer journey, and then see whether it fits for purpose, what changes needs to be done, how pieces of legacy can be migrated and componentized into a service-oriented paradigm. And when you do that, it's very important to keep in mind how it fulfills a bigger picture in terms of the customer journey, how it impacts the new customer journeys. Right. So if you move on to the next slide. Yeah, this is just a reiteration of what I told. So this is what you see on the left-hand side is a classic grouping of the legacy components. Every large organization would have a CRM, ERP, billing, order management, right? And when you think in terms of service-oriented architecture and API enablement, from our experience, what we have seen is most enterprises make the mistake of thinking API enablement as just providing an adapter and connectivity to existing functionality as this functionality. So if you have a legacy component, any external interfaces exposed by the legacy is merely transformed, and you only align to the modern protocols like SOAP or REST, publish the interface, and expect the business and the customers to automatically consume them without any problem. So what you are doing is you are just providing a pipe to the legacy as is. And from our experience, we believe it's a mistake. And which is what we have been correcting in most of our engagements, which is the focus of the next slide. Yeah, so what we need to do is what we call enablement of legacy assets. So what do I mean by this term? So enablement is, of course, you need to connect the legacy components. You need to have an adapter. You need to extract data of the legacy systems. I don't deny that exposing capabilities is important. But what is important is to analyze the capability for the fitment of purpose. And when I say fitment for purpose, how it fits in the customer journey, how it impacts the end user experience. So the interface that you expose may not even have the capabilities that the customer wants. It may not have the required capability in terms of the infrastructure. We've had classic instances in one of the other engagements when we said we had all the stakeholders in the room when we did the architecture workshop. We asked the legacy application owner, okay, we need the infrastructure to be updated and we need these following functions to be changed. And the legacy application owner was completely taken by surprise. He said, what are you talking about? I only have the budget to keep the systems up and running. I don't have any budget to make any changes to the legacy system, and it's not included in our roadmap. And this was a problem for us. Like we said, how is it going to work from an end-to-end perspective? Then the way we address this is we conduct workshops with the business team, with the legacy application owners, and we encourage the business teams to sponsor the end-to-end enablement. Like we need the business owners to allocate funding and support the legacy application owners to make changes to their respective backend applications to fit the customer journeys. And this is what we call by customer journey-centric integration. The definition of the word integration today has changed. It's not just about creating adapters to expose the functionality. It's about providing an integrated customer experience. When I say integrated, it's integrating the teams, integrating the applications, integrating the application owners. So the scope of integration has increased, and the role of the integration services provider in the digital transformation has to change, like how we have recognized it for ourselves. Okay, if I can request you to move on to the next slide, please. Yeah. So it's very important to organize the teams into three groups: beneficiary, enabler, and catalyst. So I'll quickly spend a couple of minutes explaining what these three roles are. So a beneficiary is the team that takes the offering to the market. So beneficiary team usually could be the business team, the product strategy team, the sales and marketing team that have revenue responsibilities. So the beneficiary team owns the customer journey because they have dedicated people to keep the customer journey in mind. They have the kind of user experience specialists. They'll map out the experience. But what generally happens is from our experience, what we have seen is these teams don't align with the reality of the legacy applications. So what is really futuristic in their mind, the business team's mind, is not the reality of the IT. And this in our mind is truly the role of the enterprise architecture function, which brings these three components together. So the enabler is the legacy application owner, the team that actually manages the last mile. It could be the networks, it could be our backend applications, it could be our CRM application owners, it could even be the functional teams like your security team, IT governance team. Because a classic example is when we want to open up assets for external consumption, the whole paradigm changes, right? Like you're expected to securely open up assets to third parties. That is the whole philosophy of the API economy, right? So we've had even instances in the past in some of our other clients where the security team simply had an outdated thinking that applications cannot be exposed outside the firewall, right? This is completely in contrast to the modern way of thinking, like in terms of securely opening up the assets. So enablement is also about reinventing the security policies of the organization to align to the new digital world. Catalyst, last but not the least, and this is the role that we play as integration agents. So Catalyst, as the English meaning of the term, it does not participate in a chemical reaction, it just accelerates change. So the Catalyst team aligns the beneficiaries' priorities to the legacy team's roadmap and make sure that the end-to-end customer journey can be secured and guaranteed. And this is the team that's responsible for the integrated experience. So at this point of time, I would like to let you know that we have published a book on this very topic. The title of the book is Digital API Economy, Beneficiary, Enabler, and Catalyst. So I'm one of the co-authors of this book. And this book, you can find a link on our website. You can request a hard copy for us. You can write to info@thbs.com. We'll send you a copy of the book. So at this point of time, I'd like to get into the core of the case study, Schneider Electric. The next slide, please. Yes, so Schneider Electric is a very interesting organization. It's a global specialist in energy management. It has operations in 190 countries across the world, 25 billion euros in sales in 2015, 170,000 employees in more than 100 countries. And the domains it caters are the energy infrastructure, industry, data centers, networks, buildings, and residential. So Schneider Electric grows by acquisition, right? And you have a lot of challenges in the heterogeneous environment of the IT estate. So the challenge Schneider wanted us, if we can move to the next slide, please. Yeah. So as I said, Schneider grows by acquisition, which is 10 to 12 every year. And as a result, the IT landscape is heavily heterogeneous. We have 120 ERP systems across the enterprise, which obviously means a lot of redundancy. And Schneider has a strategy to make diversity efficient and rationalize only where it makes sense. So rationalization is done only when applications reach end of life. And in the past, before Schneider Electric engaged us, integration was pretty much point to point. And there were a lot of redundancies, there were duplicates between applications, and there was a need for cross-domain integration, and there was minimum reuse of IT assets. So Schneider Electric wisely recognized this phenomenon in their organization, and we had phenomenal support from the CIO, Hervé Courail, the senior leaders, Alphonse Marquez, Pascal Perrin. So they recognized that Schneider needs to be transformed. This is not the way that Schneider should continue. Schneider needs to transform to compete in the global market space. They truly recognize the need for digital transformation using SOA and API as a means. And then they've engaged us to lead the transformation for us. So if you move on to the next slide, this talks about the approach we followed. This is the view of the landscape, the target landscape. So if you see if you read this from the bottom up, the bottom layer is the core IT capabilities, which is spread across multiple geographies. What is called the information processes in organization, the IPOT, right? And the approach we took was we said, like, Schneider is a large enterprise, we can't boil the ocean. We wanted to organize the entity into what we call the crown jewels. So we wanted to pick 20% of the Schneider assets that deliver 80% of the revenue, the Pareto principle, right? And we wanted to identify common capabilities within these 20%, and we wanted to form what we call the community of users. And the community of users are the ones that have common need. And when you build capabilities and API enable the legacy applications, keeping in mind the common need, the chances of reusing those APIs are much higher. So keeping this core principle in mind, we started the journey. The approach we're currently following is a federated approach. We wanted to build a SOA layer and an API management layer that exposes the core capabilities across these functional domains: HR, R&D, supply chain, project execution, finance, and customer experience. And Schneider is very big in having an extended enterprise. The business model of Schneider is a B2B business. So Schneider does not directly sell to clients. They sell through a team of distributors, a team of retailers, and a lot of third parties. So it's very important for Schneider Electric to securely expose the assets to the extended enterprise. So if you see the components on the top, so that represents the extended enterprise. So you obviously have customers that indirectly access the Schneider estate. You have these IoT applications, you have customer applications, you have partner applications. And in this case, the partner could be a panel builder, a partner could be an electrician company, a partner could be a building management company. And you also have supplier application, because Schneider has a very robust supply chain. So you also have a lot of third-party suppliers. And it's very important for Schneider Electric to expose data securely to the supplier organizations to improve the efficiency of the supply chain. Right? So, and what you see on the top, the green umbrella, represents the business offerings. And this is the strategic move of Schneider to move into software-based delivery of energy management solutions. So what do I mean by that is, what used to be a pure hardware, pure equipment. We're talking about energy management domain, right? We're talking about equipments like transformers and panels and all this stuff. I would not get into the details, but the direction in which the energy management industry is moving in general is these physical equipments are being recast into digital equipments. And what we mean by that is the physical footprint is reducing, and they are complemented by internet-enabled modules that can remotely deliver functionality from a cloud platform. So this is the model that the energy management industry is moving towards. And whatever we are delivering in terms of the IT capabilities is aligned to provide information in terms of the customer data, in terms of the product data, in terms of the install-based data to support the digital offerings. Yeah, if you can move to the next slide, please. So what are the deliverables and business outcomes? So we have successfully established an integration framework, and this is a long transformation. So we are in one of the phases. So the first phase successfully delivered the integration framework built on the principles of SOA and API management with focus on the customer journey integration. So we have an API management platform. So we have an enterprise service bus platform. We have a set of adapters that kind of successfully publishes the capabilities as APIs. Keeping in mind the vast distributed nature of Schneider Electric, these APIs are making a lot of difference. So we are empowering business teams, project teams, and the extended enterprise to use these APIs in many revenue-generating opportunities. So this is an ongoing process, and one of the examples that I'd like to talk about is a case where in the past, Schneider used to sell these equipments through the distributor channels, and as a result, the distributor channels used to sell it to the actual customer installation. And it so happened that the data about install base, in terms of where exactly the equipment is installed, is not available to Schneider. But that's not the case for modern equipments because everything is internet-enabled; it can easily be tracked. But the strategy followed by Schneider, and it was made possible through means of APIs, is the Schneider field engineers were empowered to offer the customer to create a QR code sticker on the physical equipment when they were engaged for field services for servicing the equipment. And this QR code will allow the field service engineers to manually capture the information, the geolocation of the equipment. And this empowered Schneider to first of all upgrade the equipments, to upsell new offerings, and to even improve the customer relationship, like in terms of opportunities that allows customers to upsell. So this is the key success. So it's opening up new opportunities to business to imagine new offerings out of these APIs that would not have been possible if these capabilities were not published. If we can move to the next slide, please. So that brings us to the end of the case study presentation. So I'll be happy to take any questions between John and myself. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Karthik. Appreciate that overview. Really interesting work with Schneider Electric. And it seems like you're, as you mentioned, you're sort of in the midst of the project right now, but there's already been some benefits realized. So thanks for sharing that with us. Appreciate it. We're going to open it up for question and answers now. If you have a question, you can use the chat feature on the webinar platform. Feel free to enter your questions there. But actually, we've already got a couple of questions, and Karthik, actually, I wanted to ask you. We have a question about what challenges did you have in executing the transformation, or I suppose you're in the midst of it. What are some of the challenges that you've experienced? Because that's a question I have as well, where, obviously Schneider Electric, it's great that leadership realized that they need to transform, but that's a massive application footprint, right? 120 ERP systems, kind of one-off point-to-point integration, minimal IT reuse. What are some of the challenges that you've had to experience so far in the transformation?
Right. So I think one of the key challenges, Schneider being a very large organization, the teams are distributed. So it's very important to keep in mind that this is not just a technical transformation initiative. So it's very important to keep in mind the organizational change management, where we had to conduct many workshops. We had to what we call the socialization of SOA. Like we had to bring different teams together in a workshop and do this as a marketing initiative. Like so this is something which is currently ongoing, and this is a challenge which we are successfully overcoming. So we'll be increasing the kind of marketing initiative internally. We are leveraging one of their internal communication platforms, their internal social network successfully, to publish this API so that any project teams that have a capability, they know about this initiative or wide, and they're able to contribute in terms of the inputs and API requirements.
Okay. There's another question sort of related to that. How important is it to have business and technology leaders to discuss and approve an API-based approach to modernization? How do you bring them all together for a unified goal? You talked about that a little bit in terms of when you identified beneficiaries, enablers, and the catalyst. But as you're working with those project teams, how important is that to actually push this through the organization?
I think it's extremely important, and that's exactly the reason why we had to organize the teams into beneficiaries, enablers, and catalysts, as you have rightly said. So the beneficiaries have to commit to the use of these APIs. So most of the times we have seen in engagements where if you go the bottom-up approach, if you build APIs without keeping in mind the end-user journey context, the chances of that API being useful is very less. When I say useful, it could be without any use.
Right.
So a transformation initiative of this size is not considered to be successful if you have a lot of APIs that don't have any use, which indicates that you have not kept in mind the end customer journey in mind when it comes to even conceptualizing and using them.
Right. Okay. Great. Another question we have is around time frame. And this is actually a question we get a lot when we interact with at Ovum. When we interact with customers. They want to know. They certainly ask about their peers. The question is, what is the typical time frame to realize the business benefits of such transformations? What kind of a timeline do you anticipate? It sounds like they're achieving some already, but what's the typical timeline for something like this?
Right. So the timeline depends on many factors. I think one of the factors we're talking about is the size of the organization and how you break it down into phases. So it's very important to plan it into phases and have pilots. So a very good time frame for a single phase is anywhere between 8 months to 1 year to see results. And it's very important to take a checkpoint at the end of the first phase to make course corrections to see what's working. And often we recommend a small pilot to be conducted just to make sure that the organization itself is ready to take up this transformation, what challenges we need to address, and then make course corrections as we go along.
I would imagine that the change management and the project management can be just as, building into the time frame must be just as important, because it's as much as it is a change for process and a change for the systems, it's also a cultural change, right? In terms of how the systems are utilized, etc. So building it in that change management must be really important.
Absolutely, I think it's the organization change management is it's extremely important because the whole initiative is not just a technical initiative. Because if most of the SOA programs across the world fail because it's completely driven by IT without getting buy-in from the business, and it's not seen as an organizational change. So that's one of the key points that you mentioned. So organizational change management and especially sponsorship from the CXO community is extremely critical for the success of such transformation initiatives.
Right, great. We actually had a question submitted beforehand about what are you seeing in terms of microservices in modernization. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
It's a good question. Microservices, of course, sure, there are a lot of interpretations of the term microservice. Like there are developer communities that are divided in thinking that microservice is not a microservice if you don't use containerization technology and DevOps and its own kind of virtual infrastructure. There's other group that think that microservice is just a different paradigm. It's just an evolution of the classic atomic service and so on. So from our perspective, we see a very good fitment for microservice when it comes to legacy modernization, because when you rewrite components or extract components, monolithic components from legacy and break it down into modular components, it's a very good candidate to expose those components as microservices. So it clearly has a fitment in API enabling legacy. But what's important to keep in mind is even though you have the terminologies like services, APIs, microservices, it's very important to keep in mind the architecture principles, the governance, because a microservice is not useful if you don't follow the traditional principles of service-oriented architecture. the classic design time governance, the runtime governance. Even a microservice has its life cycle. It needs to be identified correctly. Its granularity needs to be correct. So that's my viewpoint on microservices.
Okay. One question I had in terms of what Torry Harris does with customers, as far as the SOA API approach, are there certain characteristics to the company, as far as embracing this method? Is there certain characteristics that companies that look at this share? In other words, are they very engineering focused? Do they have tons of apps development background? Are there some characteristics that sort of attract of different customers that sort of attract them to this approach, or is it sort of all over the map?
Right. I think you touched upon a very interesting point. I think it's very important to have cross-functional skills, and it's very important to think in terms of customer. So customer obsession is one of the key traits, and everything that you do in terms of breaking down into technology capabilities is just a kind of a drill down. Everything should kind of revolve around the common anchor point, which is the customer experience. We would like to call it the customer obsession. That's where the whole customer journey oriented thinking comes into picture.
Right.
So classic examples, it's like avoiding choosing technology for the sake of technology, and we have to ask what is the business value of technology and how does the technology make a difference to the customer experience. That is the kind of change in thinking that we bring to the table, and we encourage our clients to also to have that kind of thinking. Technology for the sake of technology is a definite no-no from our perspective.
All right. Okay. Great. Thanks, Karthik. I think we're going to wrap up the webinar. Thanks everyone for your questions today. Karthik, thank you, and thank you, Torry Harris, for giving us insight on the Schneider Electric case study. Very interesting. We appreciate it. Thanks everyone for attending the webinar today. Just to reiterate, you'll be getting an email with information on the webinar recording and also a copy of today's deck for your reference. And please let's keep the conversation going. If you have follow-up questions, you can reach out to us through our website. We'd love to keep the conversation going, whether you have questions about digital transformation or application modernization or about this specific SOA API approach. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, I want to thank Karthik again. Thank you all very much for attending today. We appreciate it. And thanks, and have a great day. Thank you.